Hey everyone, this is Forever Brats, aka Justin, back with a brand new video. This is a video I am very excited to make, considering it covers a doll line that I consider incredibly underrated and that I have a lot of sentimental memories with. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Justin, why are you doing a video on something not related to Bratz? Doesn't your whole channel center around them? Well, yes and no. Bratz may be one of my personal favorite doll lines in terms of overall quality and aesthetic, and I could do hundreds of videos about them. But I also love other doll lines too. Other brands that I have core memories of include Barbie, Polly Pocket, Monster High, and Mycene, amongst many others. There are many doll lines out there that have such a fascinating story behind them that it would be a crime not to do a whole video centered around them. The fashion doll industry is almost similar to the fashion industry in that you're popular one day and the next you're on clearance, which signals the end for a once beloved doll brand that is now gathering dust on toy shelves. A forgotten memory to those who really know. In today's video, we will be discussing the history and the sudden rise and fall of Ohio art company's Betty Spaghetty. Before I start, I created a post not too long ago on my community tabs where I let you guys guess what doll brand I would be discussing in this video, and user SpongeBob guessed correctly, so a very special shout out to them. Now, to be clear, I never got to experience the OG versions of the dolls since I was born in 2002, but I do have fond memories of playing with the 2007 dolls when I was about 5 or 6, which weren't as popular, but we'll discuss that in a bit. Also, as some of you may know, but if you don't, then that's okay, I am from the Buckeye state of Ohio, which is where Betty is also from, except she originates from Bryan and I'm from Akron, which is probably why I wanted to make a whole video about her, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's move on to the video proper. Now, we have to ask ourselves a question. Who is Betty Spaghetty and what are her origins? Well, let me introduce you to a lovely woman named Elonne Dancer. Born in Toledo, Ohio, Elonne Dancer started out her career in the toy industry as a designer for the Cincinnati-based toy company Kenner, where she helped design the ever-so-questionable Milky the Marvelous Milking Cow, released in 1977. It's kind of shocking that such a concept for a toy like this would ever get greenlit, but hey, the 70s were a weird time. After her brief stint with Kenner, she would eventually work for Mattel for 2 stints, where she helped design accessories for Barbie and a series of toys based on different Disney franchises. Elonne would leave Mattel in 1996 and begin her career as a freelance designer, where she would design many different characters, including an early incarnation of the character who would eventually become Betty Spaghetty. Originally known as Bendy Boop, a play on Betty Boop, early prototypes were made from a painted fishing bobber and a bendable plastic piping toy called Neon Leon. According to Dancer in a 2001 interview with the Toledo Blade, she, quote, wanted to do a girl's Lego, where kids could twist and turn and use the fiddle factor of their hands, referencing the capability to mix and match every aspect of the doll, from her head to her toes. Additionally, she intended the doll to look cartoony and provide a sense of humor for a girl's audience with their bendy arms, legs, and hair. I wanted a funny doll. I wanted something where they would sit there and say, "Aw, look what I did." After bringing her offspring to life, she would pitch the idea to smaller toy companies. One of these was the Bryan-based toy company Ohio Art Company, known for their popular Etch-a-Sketch toy. This led to a meeting with the president of Ohio Art Company, Martin Kilgallen, in 1997, which was a success. Ohio Art's vice president of research and development, Joe Wood, showed similar approval over the concept, but expressed concern over the doll's name, which was swiftly changed after a test session where a young girl came up with the name we all know today. The dolls would go into production and would debut on store shelves in the spring of 1998.
Have you heard about Betty? Betty Spaghetty. She's got real cool clothes. Lots of clothes. She's got real cool hair. I love her hair. I've seen her style. Have you met her?
The first sets that were released included Shop Till You Drop, Fancy Party, School Days, Fun at the Beach, and Horsin' Around. These releases not only featured the titular Betty, but also her best friends, Zoe, a white doll with pink pigtails, and Hannah, a black doll with a purple ponytail. The Horse and Around set would also include Betty's pet horse named Dakota. I mean, just look at this little fellow. It's purple and it has a rainbow mane and tail. It's so beautiful. I just can't stop looking at this little monstrosity. As mentioned previously, Betty Spaghetty isn't your average fashion doll. Instead of manually changing her clothes via Velcro like standard dolls, she had interchangeable features, which gave you the ability to swap out different body parts in exchange for other parts. You could either create a character with a really cool outfit, or an absolute abomination that could be mistaken for a villain from a horror movie. Betty Spaghetty is basically a Lego set, as Elonne intended. But instead of building a city, you're building a teenage fashion doll without any real restrictions. The possibilities are endless. If that isn't enough, the dolls also had hair made out of rubbery plastic strands that resemble spaghetti noodles. Hence the name Betty Spaghetty. The hair was also made for styling, which included stringing beads into the doll's hair, which added to their already appealing design and creativity. You could also incorporate the beads onto the doll's limbs, which gave off the illusion of bracelets and anklets. What I also find interesting about the brand is that on the back of most boxes of Betty Spaghetty doll sets, a diary entry written by Betty is seen. These diary entries detail small stories related to the set you purchased and heavily incorporate every aspect of the doll, or dolls, and their outfits and accessories to an extent that is very on the nose. These faux diary entries may not be as well remembered or revolutionary as, say, the diaries that come with the Monster High dolls, but they were still incredibly entertaining to read, so I definitely would recommend keeping these in mind in case if you ever buy one of these new in box. While Betty and her group of girls were portrayed as teenagers who are interested in fashion and shopping, the brand itself focused more on creativity and less on trendy, fashionable clothing. The dolls have this really playful and colorful aesthetic that's incredibly captivating, albeit very much of their time. Nonetheless, they proved to be a big success for Ohio art, not only in the United States but also in other parts of the world, such as Europe and Australia, which became hotspots for Miss Spaghetty. International shipments were up more than 30% 6 months after the brand's initial launch, which is impressive for the company's first attempt at a fashion doll. With the growing popularity of Betty Spaghetty, Ohio Art wanted to expand her world and incorporate new concepts and new ways of playing, to not only keep things fresh, but to help the brand grow and evolve. Speaking of growing, the list of characters would also grow, adding up to over 20 characters present in the brand's lifespan. With that being said, let's continue our journey into Betty's world. The first sets released after the initial launch were the My Little Sis sets, which introduced Betty and Hannah's younger sisters, respectively named Allie and Emily. Betty and Allie's set was centered around rollerblading, while Hannah and Emily's set revolved around a tea party. Variants featuring Allie and Betty at a tea party and Hannah and Emily rollerblading were also released. The Around the World line was released in 1999 and featured Betty traveling to different parts of the world, courtesy of 4 sets. The traveling set includes Betty and her Yorkshire Terrier dog Jake. The Betty Goes Hollywood set includes Betty and her cousin Mandy in Hollywood, California. The Betty's on Broadway set includes Betty and her friend Olivia in New York City. And the Betty in Australia set would include Betty, her Australian friend Tess, and her pet koala Mel. Later releases from the Around the World line would come out in the year 2000 and would feature 2 more sets. The Betty Tours London set includes Betty and her British friend Lucy in London, England. And lastly, the Betty in Paris set includes Betty, her French friend Nikki, and her poodle Coco in Paris, France. By the way, the Betty in Paris set is one of my personal favorite Betty Spaghetty sets. I just love the overall color scheme and the dolls look adorable. Not to mention Coco, that little poodle Nikki comes with. So cute. You know, I just love the pets that these dolls come with. Special shout out to the Betty's on Broadway set, by the way. I just love the red and black color scheme and the little dash of leopard print seen in this set. Just chef's kiss, just perfection. Anyway. The closet line includes Betty, Hannah, and Zoe, and was one of the first instances where real fabric was used for specific clothing pieces, such as Betty's faux leather pink pants, Zoe's blue metallic pants, and Hannah's purple overalls. The The Slumber Party set also features the aforementioned trio and also utilizes fabric for clothing pieces. This set also includes accessories such as glow-in-the-dark beads. A notable playset released in 1999 was the Beauty Zone set, which features a vanity with a real working sink, salon chair, wigs, hair beads, and everything you need to give Betty her well-deserved makeover. Accessory packs were also released around this time. 2000 would see the release of new Betty Spaghetty sets, such as the Pets Rock line, which includes Betty and her New Yorkshire Terrier dog Jill, and Zoe and her new pet cat named Chloe. Along with this line, there was also Betty's Bike, which is pretty self-explanatory. There were also these backpack sets that were essentially recolors of previous releases. These packs were called Ready to Party and School Backpack respectively. New characters were also introduced this year, such as Kristen, a friend of Betty's who appears in the Go for a Goal set, Adam and Josh, two brothers who are also Zoe's cousins, who appear in the Big Brother Little Brother set, and a new addition to Betty's family tree, her newborn sister Katie, who makes her debut in the My Baby Sis Oh Baby set. A contest would be held for Betty Spaghetty's target audience to design a new set for the brand, and the winning design would be mass-produced. The result was the Solar Ace in Space set, released in 2001. This set included Betty, her new alien friend named Solar Eclipse, and her pet parrot. Only a brand like this would have a concept this bizarre and yet still very appealing. Also released in 2001 was the Spaghetti Doos assortment, which featured Betty, Hannah, and Zoe. This line would be the first to feature interchangeable hair pieces. Along with that, we also saw the release of the Making a Scene set, featuring the main trio, the Glow Crazy Betty doll that features light-up hair, which is activated by her outfits, the Schoolin' Around set that includes Betty and a new character named Haley, the Cool to Be Me Betty, which was released internationally, and the Hair Party Central playset, which is pretty much a recolored version of the Beauty Zone playset. But hey, you also get a free Betty doll. There were also a bunch of re-releases of older dolls around this time. And McDonald's would partner with Ohio Art to produce Happy Meal toys based on the Betty Spaghetty dolls. The first set of dolls were only sold in Europe. There was also this set of Betty Spaghetty Happy Meal toys released in Australia the same year, but they don't hit the same way that the previous set does. While Betty Spaghetty was a pretty popular doll line around this time, a certain group of girls would end up hitting the market and changing the fashion doll game forever. This is when we start to notice the sudden downfall of our Spaghetti Queen, and unfortunately, it would be something she would never recover from. In May of 2001, a new group of fashion dolls hit the market. Bratz, manufactured by MGA Entertainment. I'm pretty sure the Bratz need no introduction. I've blabbed on about these girls so many times at this point, I'm pretty much repeating myself. They were massive in the 2000s, largely due to the fact that they were popular amongst tweens, a market that many doll brands failed to break, and Betty Spaghetty was no exception. Because of the dolls' focus on creativity and colorful appearance, they were understandably aimed at a younger audience, ages 4 and up to be exact. Betty was falling out of favor with children around this time, and with the rising success of edgier, more mature fashion dolls like Bratz, other companies tried to compete by releasing fashion dolls inspired by Bratz. Ohio Art never attempted to compete with its peers. While this may have been considered a wise move on the company's part, since altering Betty's appearance to blend in with other doll lines would have likely been considered them accepting defeat, the fashion doll industry is incredibly competitive, and other doll companies like Mattel, MGA, and even Hasbro were taking risks and trying to one-up each other with their doll releases, and Ohio Art didn't want any part of that. Aside from changes going on within the fashion doll industry, Ohio Art would release new Betty Spaghetty products for the year 2002, which included Heading to Slopes, Betty's Beauty Bag, Super Stylin' Betty, Betty's Carrying Pack, Designer Girl, and Mall Makeover Madness. Ohio Art would once again introduce new characters in certain sets. The Campfire Fun and Friends set would include Zoe and her cousin Celeste, and the Makin' the Splash assortment would include Hannah, Zoe, and a new friend of Betty's named Rebecca. Ohio Art would partner with Random House to release picture and activity books based on the Betty Spaghetty franchise, which would hit store shelves in 2003. McDonald's would also produce more Betty Spaghetty Happy Meal toys, which included Hannah, Mandy, Lucy, and yet another new character named Haruko. Just like the previous set, these were only released in Europe. The last set of Betty Spaghetty products were scheduled to be released in 2003 and 2004. While most of these products would be released, some are incredibly hard to find nowadays, and others have no information about them anywhere online, with the only source being this Ohio art catalog from 2003. I'll try my best to cover everything, but if I miss something, then that's only because I couldn't find solid information about them. Products released in 2003 included Basically Betty, the Betty and Friends assortment, which included Betty, Hannah, and Zoe, the Birthday assortment, and the Mix and Minis assortment, which are honestly so adorable. Accessory packs were also released. There were also other products that were meant to be released, but I'm guessing they never were. These include the Betty's Talkin' set, which was shown in the 2003 Ohio Art Catalog, the Special Gift Assortment, and the Ride-On set, which were all shown in a March 2004 article on the Toy Directory monthly website. McDonald's would release one last set of Betty Spaghetty Happy Meal toys, which were released in North America. This set includes Betty, Hannah, Mandy, and Heidi, who I'm guessing is Haruko but with a different name. I'm not 100% sure. Ohio Art would also attempt to turn Betty Spaghetty into a pop star. The company would partner with the Swedish music company TMC to help promote the brand in the Scandinavian market. The album, entitled Smash Hits, and two singles, Aiyo Aiyo and 21st Century Girl, would be released exclusively in Scandinavian territories. But this venture into music didn't make much of an impact, and the album and singles ended up becoming commercial failures. The album is sadly not available on streaming services, but if anyone from TMC is watching this video, please do us all a favor and put it on streaming services. Haven't we suffered enough? For real though, please go listen to this album if you haven't already. The full thing's on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure y'all would enjoy it, so go listen to it, it's great. With all of her recent ventures failing to bring success, and the general decrease in popularity of the brand, Betty Spaghetty was at an all-time low, largely due to the high competition in the fashion doll market and the lack of demand for the interchangeable doll. Ohio Art was also struggling financially around this time. Shipments of their toys, including Betty Spaghetty, had dropped 15% due to weak retail markets in the US and Europe. Combine that with the company's losses in the millions and a public scandal over attempts to delist and deregister the company from the American Stock Exchange, the future wasn't looking bright for Betty or her makers, Ohio Art. By 2004, Betty Spaghetty was no longer in production, with the last ever release around this time being the Japanese exclusive Sailor Moon Betty Spaghetty assortment. Before anyone asks, yes, this is an official product. Ohio Art is credited on the back of the packaging. Ohio Art licensed their products to other companies in other countries, hence why Bondi's name is present here. With Betty Spaghetty no longer being the it girl in the fashion doll market, she pretty much faded into obscurity and became a relic of her time. Despite this, in a 2006 article from the Toledo Blade, Martin Kilgallen, who we mentioned previously, insisted that the doll was not retired but taking a little break, foreshadowing her eventual relaunch that would occur a year later. With that being said, let's discuss her attempted comeback, or comebacks in this case. Like many doll lines before and after them, there have been attempts to bring back Betty Spaghetty onto store shelves. In this case, it has happened twice. Once in 2007, and again in 2016. Let's discuss the 2007 ones first, since I have some core memories associated with them. Like I mentioned previously, the second generation of Betty Spaghetty dolls were manufactured by Ohio Art and released in the holiday season of 2007. This iteration of Betty was pretty different compared to the first generation of dolls. These were a few inches taller, had more realistic proportions, and featured a more contemporary color scheme rather than the bright, funky colors seen in the previous iteration, although the interchangeable parts were kept. Along with this, the dolls would now feature interchangeable hair pieces, not only made out of rubbery plastic, but also yarn and synthetic hair fibers. Just like the previous iteration, owners were encouraged to braid and string beads into the doll's hair. Judging by the research I did for this video, there were about 18 or so products released in this generation. I won't go into extensive detail about all of them since that would take up a lot of time, but I will pick out some notable releases that I find interesting. So let's start off with the Color Crazy set, which was available in both Caucasian and African American versions. This set gives off the most Betty Spaghetty vibes to me because of the use of bright colors and rainbows. This Betty Spaghetty set literally screamed gay rights.
Gay rights. Gay rights. Gay rights. Gay rights. Gay rights.
The Mermaid Madness set is also a notable highlight for me, mainly because I actually owned this set when I was younger. I don't know what the deal is with her, but she's one of my personal favorites from the 2007 era. I love the mystical color scheme, and she has a gorgeous screening. We've also never seen Betty as a mythical creature before, let alone a mermaid, and I'm usually not a big mermaid doll collector, so this release gets my seal of approval. The last set of dolls I want to discuss in this section is the Go-Go Glam assortment, which not only includes Betty, but also her old BFFs Zoe and Hannah, who make their reappearance in the reboot, albeit with their ethnicity swapped, with Zoe now being produced with a darker skin tone and Hannah now being produced with a lighter skin tone. So basically, Ohio Art both added and removed diversity for the second generation dolls. Considering Ohio Art had a pretty bad track record when it came to racial diversity, as seen in the original Betty Spaghetty line, this was a pretty poor decision on their end. Other products released in the second generation of the Betty Spaghetty line include Schoolin' Around, Wild Style, Winter Wow, Rockin' Out, You Glow Girl, Stylin' Chic, Hula Holiday, Glitter Glitz, and Pixie Pizzazz. These last two were likely only released in Europe, as I couldn't really find any solid pictures of them other than this one, which came from a UK eBay listing. There's also these random Betty Spaghetty sets that I'm not sure if these were 100% released or not. They could either be international exclusives or possible prototypes. I honestly don't know. What is interesting about these dolls is that they were actually done by toy designer Mario Gesualdi, I hope I'm saying that name right, as shown in his portfolio on his official website. Other than that small detail, there's nothing else much to say about these dolls. If anyone else has information on these, and whether if they were released or not, let me know. Ohio Art would also release Betty Spaghetty styling heads, Getting Groovy, Perfectly Pink, and Violet En Vogue Miki, who was a new character exclusive to the second generation of dolls. There was also a hippie chic Hannah styling head, but I'm not sure if she was ever officially released. Despite Ohio Art's best attempts, this comeback proved to be unsuccessful, and it's not hard to see why. While I do like them and hold lots of nostalgia for them, they are admittedly inferior to the original dolls. They didn't feature as many mix and matchable pieces, and the use of different materials for the hair was definitely an odd choice. Even then, I personally thought that they still held that charm the original dolls had, and I can tell that they put a lot of effort into making and producing them. However, this wasn't enough for Ohio Art. The lackluster sales of the dolls ultimately led to their second discontinuation not too long after their launch. While I had some positive things to say about the 2007 dolls, I can't say the same for the 2016 dolls. Unlike previous generations, the 2016 dolls were not produced by Ohio Art, and instead were produced by Moose Toys, who, at the time, was known for Shopkins. Ohio Art stopped producing toys in 2016 and would sell their toys to other companies. Considering the third generation of Betty Spaghetty dolls were released in the same year, it's likely that Ohio Art had plans to bring Betty Spaghetty back, but instead opted to sell the Betty Spaghetty license to other companies, and the company that won the license in the end wasn't known for fashion dolls. While that isn't the main issue with these dolls, since Ohio Art themselves weren't known for producing fashion dolls before Betty Spaghetty, take some time to consider the date that these dolls were released. 2016. The fashion doll market was pretty much on the verge of death around this time, and what was present on store shelves were either iconic dolls that went through poorly received, kid-friendly reboots, or were simply junk. So in hindsight, this reboot was pretty much dead on arrival. The third generation of Betty Spaghetty dolls would launch in August of 2016, and were, yet again, different compared to the original dolls. This iteration of Betty was aged down to a child and was smaller in size. Again, this was the era of child-friendly reboots of edgy fashion dolls, so we shouldn't be surprised. Just like the previous reboot, the 2016 dolls also utilized interchangeable hair pieces, along with the usual features seen in these dolls: interchangeable parts, beads, hair pieces, etc. This reboot not only would include the titular Betty character, but also her friends Zoe and Lucy? As you can tell, Hannah, who was previously introduced as one of Betty's best friends and who was also black, was noticeably absent. Like I mentioned previously, she was whitewashed in the 2007 reboot, and in this reboot, she was replaced by a character who in her previous iteration was white. While it's possible that Lucy was reintroduced into the brand to match the Y part of Zoe and Betty's names, I'm not sure if that was the only reason why Hannah was replaced with Lucy. Anyway, Zoe, or Zoe with a Y, in this iteration was produced with a darker skin tone, just like her 2007 counterpart, while Lucy, who was originally introduced as Betty's friend from London, was given a redesigned with a tan skin tone, making this generation of dolls more diverse compared to previous generations. In total, there were about 17 products released, which includes one 3-doll gift set, 2 deluxe sets, and 14 single sets. I'm not going to discuss these ones that much since I genuinely don't have anything interesting to say about them. I mean, what can I really say about them? Needless to say, this reboot was a complete and utter failure. The dolls were ugly and unappealing, the clothing options were bland and devoid of any real edge or personality, and they were overall cheaply made and incredibly generic. Combine that with the terrible timing of their release and similar lines that were out around the same time, and you get a reboot that failed to connect with older fans and potential new ones, essentially appealing to no one. Unsurprisingly, Moose Toys would discontinue their iteration of Betty Spaghetty not too long after. So, what can we conclude about Betty Spaghetty? Well, let me just take some time to say that Betty Spaghetty truly deserved better. Ohio Art struck gold when they first released Betty and Her Friends in the late 90s, as there was no other doll out at that time like her. She essentially broke the barriers of what fashion dolls are capable of, since you could take her apart, put her back together, mix and match her pieces, and create your dream doll. Her funky, over-exaggerated appearance also helped her stand out from other fashion dolls around this time, so it isn't surprising why she was a big success amongst children. While her success would eventually fade in the early 2000s and attempts to reboot the franchise failed to recapture the same success, she's still fondly remembered by many who grew up in the 90s and 2000s. Her legacy and influence can be seen in toys released after Betty Spaghetty, such as Twisty Girls by Spin Master and Johnny Macaroni by Famosa. This particular line is pretty interesting to me. I saw these on a Betty Spaghetty collector's guide on Facebook, and yeah, this definitely wasn't a blatant ripoff of Betty Spaghetty at all. Additionally, she was featured in an episode of Robot Chicken and was recently used as the main inspiration for the character Mommy Longlegs from the video game franchise Poppy Playtime, which, if anyone asks, is a franchise I have no interest in. Even if she wasn't as successful as Barbie, Bratz, or even Polly Pocket, she is fondly remembered by many, and dare I say it, still holds up to this day. I just wish I still had my childhood Betty Spaghetty dolls, but they're so expensive now. Oh well, maybe in the future I'll buy one. I really want that Around the World set with Betty and Nikki, or that Slumber Party set. Time will tell. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to leave some suggestions for new video topics you would like me to cover, let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to follow me on social media, links will be in the description. I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye!
We gonna rock you right to the moon, say ayo, ayo.